Hi, my name is Monica, and I'm an alcoholic. A couple weeks ago at a Saturday meeting, my home group, somebody asked if I would be willing to help out at the convention. And so I said, sure. Had no idea that I'd be standing up here introducing Lilly. 3 days ago, I said I'd better contact her to find out anything about her before I stood up here and tried to introduce her. And so this afternoon, I had the privilege of getting to know Lilly just a little bit better. She's an amazing woman. Sorry. Closer? Okay. She is an amazing woman. She'll tell you her story, but what I can tell you is that today now I can call her friend because I've been able to, through Alcoholics Anonymous, get to know her. She shared with me this afternoon her experience, strength, and hope, and for the next 80 minutes or so, she's going to share that with you. They told her she had 80 minutes. I was not taking 40 of it. So, and with that, I will introduce to you Lilly, who will share with you her experience, her strength, and her hope.
This is the only place that you can come where they clap before you even do anything. My name's Lilly, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is November the 8th, 1989. And by the grace of God and good sponsorship and doing the steps and doing the deal and walking the walk and staying on this journey, I haven't had to pick up a drink or anything else, and I stand before you tonight fully clothed and I hope in my right mind. And I would be sadly remiss if I didn't tell you that I come from the friendliest group on the face of the planet, and that would be the Westbrook Alumni Group. And when I first went to that group and they used to say, oh, we're the friendliest group on the face of the planet, I'd go, oh, yes. But now I'm glad I'm a member of that group, and we meet on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock in the Westbrook Warren Church in Westbrook, Maine, and if you're ever up in that way, we hope that you'll join us. You'll be warmly welcomed there. And boy, I'll tell you, I can't look on this side of the room over here because there's people over there that want to make faces at me. I'm not sure I can look at this side of the room because as we were sitting here doing all the stuff, getting ready, I noticed there's sort of a wild and woolly group over here. And those would have been the people that I would hang out with. Those gang right there. See them all? And the ones right behind them that are trying to hide, those two. Anyway, I want to thank the committee for putting on. This is your 31st roundup here in Rhode Island, and I congratulate you on that. And whoever was responsible for getting me down here to speak, I want to thank them. And I'm always nervous when I get up here. And just before tonight when we were having dinner, one of the ladies at the table said, so are you a professional speaker? And I almost choked. I said, I don't think so. I said, I know that there are people out there that are circuit speakers, but my friends say that I'm a circus speaker. So I don't know how long you have to do this before you get to be a circuit speaker, but I don't think I am. I am this. I am gifted by God to be able to stand in front of you tonight and share my story, the way that it happened to me. I'm no different than anybody sitting in this room. I'm a drunk. I'm a drunk that was lucky enough to find their way to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's, in essence, the beacon of hope message that I'm going to have for you tonight, I did not come from an alcoholic family. I know a lot of you did. I know a lot of you come from dysfunctional family. I didn't have that. I had a very loving family. I had a mom and a dad, and I had a mom that was a stay-at-home mom, and I had a dad that went to work every day, and he'd come home every day at 4, and you could pretty much set your watch by that. And I had 3 loving brothers, and I had an adopted brother, and both of my grandparents, both my grandmothers lived with us, and I had a very loving childhood. I mean, I did not know until just a few years ago, sitting around the table with a bunch of my friends, that I was even poor when I was growing up. We always had plenty to eat. We always had clothes on our back. I mean, I didn't know that we were poor, and my friend Patty came with me this weekend, and she's my human MapQuest. And it's funny, because when she came to one of her first meetings in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was sitting next to her and I had purple hair, and Patty sort of raised her shoulder as if she was too good to be seen with me. And after the meeting, I got up and hugged her brother, and she thought, my mother isn't going to like this at all. And today we're dear friends, and realize that our paths have really crisscrossed in sobriety, and that our lives have been very much alike growing up. And so I can't stand here tonight and tell you that I can blame this on some terrible childhood. I can't. I don't know how I got to be the alcoholic. And as a matter of fact, I have 3 brothers that very rarely have they ever drank too much. They're those people that really make us alcoholics mad. They're the ones that, oh, I'm starting to feel this. I guess I won't drink anymore. And then they say things to me like, does that bother you? I said, you bet it bothers me. I don't understand. Why bother? Why bother? If you're not in it for the deal, then why bother? Why have a sip? I've never had a sip of anything in my life. Then tonight they bring this water in these. I said, that looks like a bottle of tequila to me. Anyway, so I had a really wonderful childhood. I can't blame it on that. I went to Catholic schools. I can't blame it on that, I'm not a recovering Catholic. I'm a Catholic in good standing. I go to Mass every Sunday. I like what the Catholic Church does for me. And if you're recovering from that too, well, you still got some work to do, and that's just my thought. I can't blame it on God. I know Patty and I heard the same thing, all of you that went to parochial school and heard that God's out to get you, and you might as well do whatever you're going to do because you're going to hell anyway. That ain't what I heard. I heard right out of the Baltimore Catechism that God loved me and He was everywhere. And I figured, well, no matter what I did, He was going to be there to pick up the pieces. And that's my experience, God has been there to pick up the pieces. And I had my first drink of alcohol at the age of 19, and that's old by AA standards, Jesus, some of you people were drinking when you were 3 and 4 years old. You belong here. Nobody in my family said don't drink, but you knew that as a teenager. You didn't come home with alcohol on your breath. I don't know what would have happened. I really don't, but I already knew that was one of those unwritten rules. Don't do that. You'll be in big trouble if you do that. And so I didn't do that. And I realize today that some members of my family, my mother's sisters, I tend to think today that they may have been heavy drinkers because I used to love it when they came. They would come and whenever they came, they would drink some beer and they would get loud and they would smoke cigarettes and it was very glamorous to me, and they would tell these stories and I would laugh. I just thought they were wonderful people. And today I realize, all of those people are gone. All of those people have passed away, and they all passed away at very early age. And I suspect that maybe alcohol might have had a part of that. But I don't know if they were alcoholic or not. But I know that when they came, it was a lot of fun. And so I didn't really know a lot about drinking, except when those people came, they drank some beer and they got loud. So how I had my first drink, I was 19 years old, and the occasion was my wedding reception. And I should tell you a little story about me before I had my first drink of alcohol. When I was a senior in high school, if your date wasn't a member of the graduating class, they couldn't go to the banquet. And my date was not a member of the graduating class, so his parents invited us to go to the Portlander, which was a very fancy restaurant back then. And my parents had saved up some money, and they bought me this beautiful dress. It had a hoop skirt, and I didn't know anything about a hoop skirt. And, those girls in the South know about hoop skirts, but I didn't know about them. If you don't sit just right, And so the first thing I did, this beautiful hoop skirt, we go into this lovely restaurant. We sit down, and I sit on the hoop. Whoop, there goes the dress. His father says, you can have anything you want on the menu. You should have seen these menus. I'm telling you, I never seen anything like it in my life. They were like this big. They had tassels hanging off them. They had things in there I never heard of, So I ordered the fillet mignon. And so I have on this dress with these big hoop skirt, and I have on these spiked heels. They're back in style now, but, back when I graduated from high school, that was in style. And so the waitress asked me what I wanted. I'll have the fillet mignon. How do you want it? I'll have it cooked. And so they bring the fillet mignon. I wasn't too impressed. Didn't look like much to me. But anyway, I went to cut it, and when I did, it slid off the plate. And I did not want his father to think that I was uncouth, so I kicked it under the table. And when he looked up at me, I just said to him, geez, I was awful hungry, like I swallowed it whole. And we had dinner. It was lovely, and we finished, and we got up and we got ready to leave. And when I stood up, I realized I'd skewered that steak with the heel of my shoe, and I sort of walked out like Groucho Marx, I hadn't had anything to drink yet. 6 months later, I had my first drink. And so I'm at now I've gotten married to this man, and we're at the wedding reception, and it was at the VFW, and later it would become the Sahara Club. And 27 years to the day that I had my first drink there, I would be at the podium speaking. But anyway, we walked in, and what I knew about drinking I'd seen on TV. Lucy and Desi were going to cocktail parties, and so my dad walked me up to the bar, and he said, what are you going to have? And I was like, well, I don't know, Daddy. What are you having? And he said, well, I'm going to have a whiskey and ginger. And I said, well, then that's what I'll have, too. And so they brought the whiskey and gingers. And in service clubs how they are. You get like whiskey and ginger. And he said, magic words. He said, here's to you. And I said, okay, thank you. And I downed it, because that's what I knew about if somebody toasted you, you were supposed to down it, And the next thing I remember, I was taking my wedding gown off on the front lawn of the place, and that's the way it was going to be for me after that. When I drank, something disappeared, My clothes were the first things to go, and I didn't mean for it to be that way, It's just how it happened, And another thing that I found happened to me, when I drank alcohol, something happened, I hear men say this all the time, but I've never heard a woman say it, I got 6 feet tall, and I was tough and strong, and I could beat anybody up in the place, and I was going to show them. And so I would get a drink in me, and then I'd be fighting with some guy out in the parking lot. I have no idea what that was about, but that's the way I was, And then my husband's friends, they were serious drinkers. And I would hear them talk about it. They were going to go do some serious drinking. And I wanted to be a serious drinker. I knew that. I knew that I wanted to be a serious drinker, because somebody that could only drink like one drink, get in a fight, puke, and go home is not a serious drinker. But I'm thinking, I want to be a serious drinker. So I called my husband's friend, and I said, how do you get to be a serious drinker? And he said, well, Lily, you'll have to practice. He said, and it'd probably be a good idea if you coat your stomach. And I said, well, what do you coat it with? And he said, well, vegetable oil. I was wanting to be a serious drinker, so, I drank like a half a cup of vegetable oil, and then we went out drinking, and that doesn't work. I'm here to tell you that if you haven't done that, it just makes it all come out faster, And but this is how I am, Now I realize that this man that I married is an alcoholic. I didn't even know what an alcoholic was, but I knew that he drank way too much, because he would come home and he would drink. He used to sit on the floor. We had nice furniture, but he sat on the floor. But when he would get up, there'd be an outline of his body where he sat, with beer cans. And what do I know? I don't know nothing, So we're married, and we have a child, and we have a second child, and our second child died of SIDS, and they found him that day in a barroom. See, and I didn't know any of the signs of alcoholism. I did not know that he was an alcoholic, and that that's what he had to do, and that after we suffered that profound loss, that he could not help himself, that he had to continue to drink. But I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of that until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so we would just fight. We would fight about his drinking, and then he would try to quit drinking, and I would keep drinking. I would just think, well, he's the one with the drinking problem. I don't have to quit drinking. I look back on that today, and I think how insane that could be, and how hard it must have been for that man to try to quit drinking. And for me to have that attitude that it was okay for me to drink, So we went on, and we had 2 more children, and when I was 6 months pregnant with my last child, he came home drunk one night and proceeded to beat me up. And I knew that night that if I didn't get up and fight, that I would die. And that after he killed me, he would kill my children. And so we had a terrible, terrible fight that night, and we practiced on killing each other, And about the time the cops got there, I had pushed him out a second-story window after burning him with boiling water, and was getting ready to drop a vacuum cleaner on his head. And when the cops came and said, don't do that, you know. And I was thinking that I could do that and I could collect the Social Security. And I mean, I still wasn't a serious drinker even yet, you know. So just let you know what happens when I add alcohol, you know. Anyway, I divorced that man and off I went to college and I got that big S on my chest. You know, a lot of women get that. You know, a lot of women that go through a divorce and we get the big S on our chest, you know. We get the Superman and we get the cape and we get the whole bit, you know, because we can do it all. We don't need them. I didn't need him. I could do this all by myself, you know. And the fact of the matter is that I went to college and I got a college degree and I was very fortunate. You know, I moved in with my parents and at the time, right after I graduated from high school, my father came down with cancer, and I was going to move, and the doctor said, "Don't move. It would kill my dad to take the grandchildren away from him." And so I stayed there. But you know, that was the beginning of my disease starting to take off, and I still didn't know that, you know, because I had free babysitters. I had a mom and dad that were home, and I could go to the local VFW and I could drink, and you know, I would lose clothes, and I wouldn't know where I was, and I look back on it today, and I want you to know that I really think it's pathetic, some of the stuff that I did, but I did it under the lash of alcoholism, and I didn't even know that was what was wrong with me, you know. And I wish I could tell you that I woke up one day and I realized that's what it was, but that's not what happened to me, you know. I have had operations as a result of drinking too much alcohol, and I have broken bones from too much alcohol, and even then I didn't think that there was anything wrong with me, you know, and I was just having a good time on the weekends, you know, and eventually I bought a house. I bought a beautiful house in Wyndham, and I have these 3 little kids, and I move off to Wyndham, and I can do it all by myself. I don't need any help. I don't need any help from anybody. I got the big S on my chest. You get it? I'm a super mom. I got the cape. I got it all. And I don't need any help from anybody. But by now, I'm realizing that when I go out to drink, I don't make it home. I don't make it home. I don't know where I make it to. I don't know where I woke up. I don't know who the hell that is I woke up with, you know. How did I get here, you know, and where are my clothes and what's left of them and how do I get back where I need to be? And I mean, it wasn't fun, and I wish I could tell you that was the end of my drinking, but it wasn't. It was only the beginning of my alcoholism. So what happened for me was this. I got scared one night because I woke up someplace where I shouldn't have been. And I was just terrified, you know, that I had these kids and that, you know, I didn't want them to be reading about their mother in the paper. And so I figured out something. You know, what I did was I had this beautiful house, a beautiful yard, and I went to the store and I bought a 12-pack of beer and I strategically placed it around the backyard. I know everybody that's a social drinker is doing that. And so I strategically placed it around the backyard, and then I began to mow. And I'd mow a couple of swipes and stop and have a beer, and then I'd mow a couple of more swipes, then I'd stop and have a beer, and a miracle happened. I got that whole lawn done. It looked great, you know. I had drank that beer. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My kids were in the house. They were safe. You know, I was there to take care of them, stumbling around. But, you know, I was there. And so what happened for this alcoholic here is that I mowed that lawn every day. I mowed that lawn every single day. It looked like a golf course, you know, and then it got to be fall, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I started raking it, you know, and in the winter I shoveled it, and I'm nuts. I'm absolutely nuts, you know, and so I had a really good job with the federal government, and I quit that job to become a bartender because, you know, if you're a drunk like I'm a drunk, you got to quit the job. You know why? Because you got to get closer to the booze. And by this time in my drinking career, I could not afford to pay for as much booze as I needed to consume. So I quit a perfectly good job to become a bartender so I could get close to the booze. And I would have the happy hour crowd, and I would drink. I'd be drunk before they ever got there. You know, I opened the place. You know, yeah, I had to test all the booze, make sure it was nobody. I didn't want anybody to get sick. So by now I'm really crazy. I'm drinking every day. I don't know if I'm drinking without my own permission yet. I just know that I'm drinking every day. You know, and by now my kids are teenagers, and my youngest child was 13, and I have this job. I'm working at a really high-class place. I'm working at the AmVets, and I get a phone call one afternoon, and they think that my son has been selling marijuana at school. And so I take some eucalyptus cough drops, and I drive up there, and before I went, got a very good idea. About this time in my drinking, I started getting really good ideas. And my good idea was this. Put them on the honor system. Let them make their own drinks. Let them make their own change. And make sure you put a tip in the bucket. I'll be back tomorrow to pick up my tips. And I left. And I went up to the school to see what this kid was up to, and he was just this little kid at that time. He was just small for his age. And he's sitting in a chair and his feet are swinging back and forth. And he's like, I don't give a care. And I said, yeah, wait till I get you home. And I'm plotting and thinking, what am I going to do to this kid? And I also had, alcoholics are uncanny in their ability to know what's going to happen. And I knew they weren't going to be pleased with me at that job, but, I didn't want them to fire me. So I went in there the next day to get my tips and quit. And decided that I needed to stay home and help this child. This kid obviously had a problem, and that I was going to stay home and take care of him. And if he was going to act like an animal, he needed a zookeeper, and I was going to put myself in that job. Man, I'll tell you. After 2 weeks, what happened is this. I realized that I didn't want to be with him, and he didn't want to be with me. He wanted to be with his friends, and I needed to find some new ones. And it was at that point that I became a daily barroom drinker. I'd go to the bar every day. I'd go to the bar and I'd drink, and I did some crazy, crazy stuff in that bar, I did crazy, crazy stuff. Drugs are not a part of my story. I will tell you my big experience with drugs, okay? I smoked marijuana once. I knew when I smoked it, I was sitting on a bar stool, and I knew that I was able to get onto that bar stool all by myself. But I knew that when it was time to get off, I was going to need help. And I was so high I could have gone duck hunting with a rake. And then what happened to me is I fell asleep. I was never going to do that again. It got in the way of my drinking. Who would do that stuff? I didn't get any of the other side effects of marijuana. I didn't get any of that stuff they talked about. You get this, you get that, you'll be hungry. I didn't get any of that. I got sleepy. And I didn't like that. I did not want to be sleeping and screwing up my drinking time, And so now I got a job in a saloon, and I'm beginning to think that I didn't really like who I was, but I didn't know that was the problem. So I would wake up in the morning and I would decide who I was going to be. Today maybe I'll be Jimmy Buffett, and if I'm going to be Jimmy Buffett, then I'll dress up like Jimmy Buffett. And you dress up like Jimmy Buffett. If you're going to be Jimmy Buffett, you've got to listen to Jimmy Buffett tunes, And so every day I'm somebody else, and I'm working in a saloon, and I think I'm a cowgirl, And so I wake up one day and I decide I'm going to be a cowgirl, and I get all dressed up like a cowgirl, and I got the little skirt and the, with a slit up the thing, and the little white cowboy boots and the cowboy hat and the vest, and oh yes, I'm a cowgirl. And I go off to the place where I work, which again is a saloon. You know what they do in a saloon. They drink in a saloon. So I drink in the saloon as well as work in the saloon. And on the way home from the saloon, I got picked up by the cops. And they wanted to know what I was doing. And I said to them, I got a good idea. I said, do you want to know the truth, or do you want me to tell you a lie? And they said, well, of course we want you to tell the truth. And I said, well, it's the saddest thing. I said, my horse died, and I have just come from burying him. And they said, where do you live? And I said, well, just up the street. And they said, why don't you get there, And so they probably should have arrested me, but they didn't. And so that was the first of some run-ins with the police, Then after that, they used to pull me over all the time. They give me these little warning slips, like my tail light was out or my headlight was out or the license plate thing. And so, you know what I did? I got drunk and I took all those little slips right down to the chief of police, because I said to him, if you guys give me one more of these slips, he says, I'm getting you for harassment. And about this time in my life, I started to drink tequila. I sort of liked what tequila did for me. It was like a mule kicking you in the ribs, but boy, it was fast, Whew, I'm there, And funny thing happened when I drank tequila. I'd break out in a rash. You get this rash on my neck. It'd be a really funny rash on my neck. And I tell all the people at the bar, I said, what do you think about this rash on my neck? I only get it when I drink tequila. And they go, never heard of anything like that. I said, I'm going to talk to the doctor about it next time I go to the doctor. So I go to the doctor and I say, you know what? I said, when I drink tequila, I said I get this rash on my neck. He says, I never heard of anything so stupid in my life. I said, well, if it ever happens to me again, I'll come right over. So I go to the bar the next day. I drink a few shots of tequila. I get the rash on my neck. I tell them at the bar, save my drink. I got to go over to the doctor and show him this rash. So I go over there. I show the doctor the rash. I says, look at this rash. He goes, what happened? I says, I drank some tequila. He says, don't drink tequila. I don't know any social drinkers that are going to the doctor complaining about a rash that they only get when they drink tequila. But I'm crazy. I'm absolutely nuts. This boy that was 13 got himself into some trouble, and they said that we had to go before the school board. And so I decided that I would show him how to beat the school board at the room game. I knew those people. They're a bunch of idiots, you know. And so I go Harper Valley PTA to have a couple of drinks to fortify myself and drag this kid off to the PTA, off to the school board meeting. Yes, I put the speakers of the stereo in the window, facing out. I put Elvis Presley on the stereo, as loud as it could go, singing How Great Thou Art, while I sat on my front steps drinking tequila right out of the bottle. Here, Brother Fletcher, deal with this, you know, and... oh, God. I was crazy. I mean, nuts, just crazy. You know, we'd go in the bar and drink, and I'd be the one in there that pull the fire alarm. You'd all go out and exit the building because the fire alarm was going off. I'd scoop all the money off the bar. When you all came back in, I'd set up the house, you know. And so I'm absolutely certifiably crazy. I'm absolutely certifiably nuts. I started drinking at a place called the Top of the East, and I ended up at a place called the Dump on the Hump. And at the Dump on the Hump, the boys there didn't care how much you drank. And if you're the kind of a drunk, like I'm a drunk, you go to those places and you know those people are starting to count how much you're drinking, so you go to a place a little less classy because they're not going to count how much you drink. When those people start counting how much you drink, you go a little bit lower, and you just keep going till you end up in the Dump on the Hump, you know. And so that's what happened to me. I end up on the Dump on the Hump, and they don't care how much you drink. Just don't leave your drink alone because they'll be drinking your drink, you know, and you'll be drinking their drink too. And so I'm absolutely certifiably crazy, and I'm still working at this school, you know, and so I have summers off, you know. And my last great and wonderful idea that I had was that I was going to, I got a job taking care of this lady's dogs, and she lived on the lake, and she had a beautiful home on the lake, and she had these 2 dogs, and my job was to let the dogs out. And after I let the dogs out, I could do whatever I wanted. So I said to her one day, "Can I use your boat?" And she says, "Sure." I said, "Well, I think I'm going to make some sandwiches and coffee, and I'm going out there on the lake, and I'm going to sell sandwiches and coffee to those fishermen. They're out there early every morning." She says, "Hey, that's a great idea." You know, so I don't get a license or anything like that. That's just way too complicated. I just make the sandwiches and the coffee, and I put it in the boat, and all of a sudden, I got a good idea. You know, I think I'll be Jimmy Buffett today. So I go back up into the cottage, and I get the rig on, you know, the Hawaiian shirt, the Hawaiian pants. I go down, I put the tape in the thing, you know, and if you're going to be Jimmy Buffett, you know, well, you've got to have a pitcher of margaritas, and so... I'm having a pitcher of margaritas, and I'm in the boat now. I got the boat pulled out into the lake. You know, I'm sitting up on the back. You sit up on the back of the front seat. This is how you do it, in case you want to know. You sit with your butts on the back of that, on the part where your back is supposed to be. That's where your hiney is, right? Sit up there. You have to steer with your foot, because you need both hands. You need one hand to hold the drink and one to wave and say, "Would you like to buy a sandwich?" And here's the funny thing that happened that morning. It's 7:30 in the morning, and I'm already drunk, and I'm cruising around the lake, you know, looking for some, poor unsuspecting soul to buy a sandwich off me. And all of a sudden, I had this idea that there were women in those cottages that lined that lake, and that they were looking out the window. They were doing their breakfast dishes, looking out the window. They had their aprons on, looking out the window, saying, "God, I wish I could be like her." One of those women is my sponsor today. And she tells me that I have a job to do, and my job is this. I'm to come here and carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and let you know that Alcoholics Anonymous is alive and well in the grand state of Maine. So this is what happened. What happened for me is this. I began to start having those feelings that I wanted to quit drinking, and I made the promise that every drunk makes to themselves, and that is, tomorrow I won't drink. But tomorrow would come, and I couldn't not drink. You know, I didn't know how to not drink the next day. And I wasn't going to tell you guys that I wasn't going to drink, because if I told you when I wasn't successful at it, you'd think I was a loser, and I didn't want you to think I was a loser, as if you did not know. So, now I'm starting to have that thing, you know, where I don't really want to drink, but I'm not even going to attempt to quit drinking, because I know, you know, this is what happened. I made the promise, tomorrow I won't drink. Tomorrow, I made it till like maybe 4 o'clock. then the next day I'm not going to drink at all, and I make it to like noon, and then I'm like, the hell with it. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, and I wake up at 8:30 at night. I'm sleeping in my van on the side of the road, and the cops are knocking on the door, and they want to know what I'm doing, and they ask you stupid questions, and I'm like, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm just taking a little power nap here, and they say that I have to move the car, and I'm smart. Now, I'm a very smart drunk, because I know that if I put the key in that ignition and move that car, they are going to get me for an OUI. Whereupon, one of the school board members says to me, my son is a Boy Scout, and he wouldn't do anything like that. And I said, your son is in the same troop as mine. If they meet in my house, I got news for you, buddy. What they did was they said that my kid should go to an alternative school. So the next day I took my kid to this alternative school for an interview. And the very next day after that, he started school there. And when I left that day, there was a big, tall kid, had my son by the arm and was swinging him over his head, telling him what a wonderful school it was. And for the first time in my life, I got this attack of just utter and raw fear that I had turned my kid over to a bunch of animals. And so the next day, I started volunteering at that school. And then the next year, they hired me to work in that school, and I'd like to tell you that I stopped drinking when I worked in that school, but I didn't. They spoke to me many times about my drinking at that school, and I would just say things to them like, I wasn't doing anything. I just went out last night. It was dart night. I had to go play darts, and I had a few beers, and, I'm fine. And I was nuts. I was absolutely nuts, I fancied myself about this time to be an athlete. I decided that I needed to buy a vehicle to carry my athletic equipment in. I bought a 23-foot stretch van. The first thing I did when I got that van was have an Ugelhorn put in because, that's important. And I had a nice stereo put in it. And then one day in July, I decided that I wanted to be Al Jolson. I woke up one morning and I thought Al Jolson would be a good person to be today. And so I got completely dressed up in blackface and put on a tuxedo, and I'm riding up through the main intersection in my town. I stop at the red light, and these kids come up. They got one of those hot little cars with a T-roof, and they pull up next to me, and they're listening to their tunes, and I'm just all of a sudden got an attitude thinking, well, don't they think there's something? So I put my tape in, crank it as loud as it goes, Swanee, how I love you, how I love you. And these kids are looking at me like, what in the God's name is that? Complete blackface, driving down the road. I had to drive, I don't know how many miles. I could sing the whole tape, and then I go to the bar and have a drink, in complete blackface. I don't think there's anything wrong with me, I mean, isn't everybody doing this, So I'm crazy. I'm absolutely crazy. And I wished I could tell you that was the end of my alcoholism, but it wasn't. That's not the way it happened for me. This beautiful house that I had, I now began to destroy this house. This house now had punch holes in all the walls. There was a dartboard hanging in the living room. There was no carpet left on the floor. And that's a story in itself. In the South, they have a saying, Dick can vouch for it, they have a saying down there, it's like cutting up a rug. But I think they don't say it really like that. But I have a disease of perception. You say one thing, I hear something different, So anyway, I had a neighbor come one day, a friend of mine came, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm having a Bloody Mary, and would you like to have a Bloody Mary? She goes, no, I'd like to have a cup of coffee. And I thought, nobody in their right mind would get a cup of coffee in my house. My idea of coffee was turn on the hot water, wait until you couldn't hold your finger under it any longer, put some hot water, instant, voila, you got coffee, right? So I make the coffee, I take it in, I give it to her. She dropped the cup on the floor, and it made a big stain in the middle of the rug. And she got very upset. She was like, oh, my God, Lily, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I got a good idea. I went to the kitchen. I thought, I don't even like that rug. So I said, I'll just go get some paper towels. But on the way there, I got this good idea. And I came back with some scissors, and I knelt down, and I cut that big stain out of the rug, and opened the door and threw it out on the front lawn. And that was going to become a symbol now. The neighbors, every time I'd go on a tear, we'd cut up another piece of the rug and throw it out on the front lawn, and the neighbors would know. And she's on a toot, leave her alone, And so by the end of my drinking, there was no carpet left in the house anywhere, any room. Punch holes in all the walls. All the doors had holes in them. The windows, 13 windows when I got here. 13 windows had bullet holes in them. I don't know if I was shooting out, the neighbors were shooting in. I don't know. Honest to God, I don't know. I don't know how they got there. I don't know, but I know that every single window in that house had at least one bullet hole in it, and I don't know. My neighbor across the street was a woman that had relocated from Tennessee, and she was from the Bible Belt, and she was a born-again Christian, Southern Baptist, and she was going to come over and save me, and she'd come over to my house, and I'd be drinking, and she would say something to me, and I have a disease of perception. I don't know what she said, but what I heard was the whistle was going to blow, and there was going to be blood in the crib, and I'm like, whoa, the heck, whoa. And she wanted Brother Fletcher to come over and talk to me. They wanted me to be saved, and I said, I am saved, and so the next time I saw Brother Fletcher's car pull up over to her house, I got an idea. And my idea was, so I was released from the hospital. My house was in such a shambles that I couldn't even let my family members take me home. Because, you see, my family members didn't see me when I was doing all this drinking. I was hiding from them. My kids saw me, but my mother didn't see me. My brothers didn't see me, So I got a friend to drive me home. And I went in the house that night. It was in November, and it was November the 8th. And I hadn't had anything to drink since October the 29th, but my sobriety date is November 8th because of this reason. I went in the house that night. There was a note on the door from the bank. They were going to foreclose on that house. I hadn't paid the mortgage payment in 6 months. There was no lights in that house. There was no phone in that house. There was no running water in that house. There was no groceries in that house. There was no heat. There were no kids. And I couldn't stay there. And I went up to the bar that I always drank in, and I sat down, and they saw me come in, and they had my drink on the table. They had a shot of tequila and a beer chaser, and I doctored my hand all up to do that shot, and I looked up, and there was a mirror behind the bar. And I had that moment of clarity, that fast. What I saw looking back at me in the mirror scared me to death. I knew right then and right there, for a split second, that I was a helpless, hopeless, alcoholic woman, and that if I didn't put the drink down, I was going to die in a gutter somewhere, and wouldn't that just be great for my kids? And I set that drink back on the bar, and I threw a $5 bill down, and I walked out of that place, and that's why I call November 8th my sobriety day, because I didn't drink that drink, and the next day I went to work. One of the women that worked with me had a great deal of guts, and she said, I've written a letter, and I want you to take it home and read it. And I took the letter home, and I read it, and inside the letter she said that everybody that I worked with loved me very, very much. It was breaking their heart to see what was happening to me. And she suspected that I had a problem with drinking. And the reason that she suspected that was because she was a member in good standing of Alcoholics Anonymous, and if I wanted to go to a meeting, she would be glad to take me to one. And I thought, how dare you? How dare you? I also had that same day an appointment with my doctor. I went to my doctor, and he said to me, Lily, you had a massive heart attack. You're lucky to have survived. When we did the test on your heart, we found out that you had third-stage cirrhosis of the liver. And if you don't put down the drink, you'll be dead in 5 years. And if you can't put it down on your own, I suggest that you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. That was twice in one day that I heard Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what AA was. I thought it was like the car place. You call them up, they give you a map or something. I didn't know. So this lady at work, she, wanted to take me to a meeting, and she said, why don't you not drink, and I'll take you to a meeting tomorrow night. And I thought, okay. So I went home to this house that I had created shambles. It is now a pig pen. I mean, it is absolutely ready to be bulldozed over, this house. I had completely destroyed it. There's no carpet left. All the walls have holes. All the windows have bullet holes. I mean, it's a mess. It's a shambles. It's disgusting. And it was time to get ready to go to that meeting, and I knew I wasn't going to go. But that 1/10 of a faith that I asked for, that 1/10, just give me 1/10 of the faith that my mother has. I heard my mother's voice, and it said, if you're not going to go, Lily, call her up and tell her it'd be really rude not to show up. And I went to the phone to call her, and the phone had been shut off. And it never occurred to me to go to a phone booth and put a quarter in the booth and call her up and say I couldn't come. So I drove 15 miles to her house to tell her I couldn't come. She said, come right in. I went in, she had the table all set very beautifully, and there was a gift wrapped up on it, set on a plate, and it was all wrapped up and had a beautiful bow on it. And I unwrapped it, and it was the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and blue book in big white letters that said Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't want to forget how I felt at that moment. I thought, how in the hell am I going to get out of this? And I didn't have a desire to quit drinking anymore, I had it for a minute, but I didn't have it anymore. But there was a lot of people, obviously, in my life that had a desire for me to quit drinking. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of this? And she said, I wrote something inside the front cover. And I opened the front cover, and she wrote, to Lily, my friend with love, may you someday know how important this day is to me. Fasten your seatbelt and welcome to the greatest adventure of your life, one day at a time. And so I thought, okay, well, what do we have to do? And she said, well, we're going to eat dinner and then we'll go to the meeting. And I thought, okay, great. So we go to the meeting, right? We walk into the meeting. There's this little old guy saying, go down the stairs, into this room. I don't know how many people were there, but, I have a disease of perception, so I think there was 200. There's probably 50, but I thought there was 200 there, and the room was full of smoke, and there's this little old guy standing at the door. Welcome. You're amongst your own kind. I thought, I don't think so. I don't think so. So I'm sitting in the third row in the end seat. I have purple hair, so I ain't doing that. Cop says, if you don't move it, we're going to have to tow it. And I says, well, as long as you're towing it, tow it to Wyndham, because that's where I lived, And it's sad. I mean, it's truly sad, because I really and truly, it never occurred to me that what I was doing was wrong. It never occurred to me that what I was doing was not being the kind of a mom that my kids needed. It never occurred to me that the example that I was setting was going to lead my kids down the same path. I love my kids with every fiber of my being. And I have come to realize since I come to Alcoholics Anonymous that what I did under the lash of alcoholism was wrong. I loved them with everything I had in me, but I was the most neglectful mother at the same time. When they needed me the most, I was there the least, And I'm here to tell you that, what happened from my family is not fun. But this is what happened to me. What happened to me was, on the night before my last drunk, I dyed my hair purple, and long before it was fashionable to dye your hair purple, and women my age shouldn't have been dyeing their hair purple anyway, but I got an idea. I decided to dye my hair purple, and it was beautiful purple. And that night I went to the bar, and I told the bartender that I thought I might be an alcoholic, but I wasn't sure, and he should keep the drinks coming while I made up my mind. And sometime during that night, I remember saying to that bartender, I'm going to ask God to give me a sign if I'm really, really an alcoholic. I'm going to ask God to give me a sign, and if he gives me a sign, I'm going to quit drinking. And this is what happened to me. The next morning, I went out that night, and by now I got my van. In the back of my van, I've got a bed in the back of this van. I got a Coleman cooler full of booze. I've got a mirror. I've got a change of clothes. I've got all the bases covered, And I don't have to drive drunk. I can just be wherever I am. And I always was wherever I am, wherever I am. That's where I would sleep, And that's the saddest thing in the world is to be a mother of kids and to be sleeping in a van on the side of the road and thinking it was okay. I mean, that's alcoholism, folks. That is alcoholism. When you think that what you're doing is okay and it's hurting so many people and you think that you're not hurting anybody but yourself, I got news for you. Anyway, so this is what happened. I went out that night and I got in that back of that van and I really remember that I got down on my knees before I passed out and I said, God, please give me 1/10 of the faith that my mother has. And that was my prayer. My prayer wasn't, give me a sign. It was, give me 1/10 of the faith that my mother has. And the next morning I got up, and I want to tell you that I was driving a school bus. I'm not proud of that, but that's the fact. The fact is that I was driving a 15-passenger van every day, and probably the last 8 years before I got sober, I was drunk. Alcoholics are very good at passing field sobriety tests, but if they'd given me a blood test, I'm sure I would have been legally over the limit. And I was driving kids to school in that van, and this is what happened to me. The next morning I went to pick up the kids, and we had to drive across country then. It's an alternative school, and we had to drive quite a long ways. It's about 25 miles. And I had the kids on, and I was sweating profusely, and I could feel this pressure in my chest. And I was scared, and I had that sense of impending doom it talks about in the big book, but I had no idea what was going on. All I could think of, I was saying this prayer, please, God, don't let me get in a wreck before I get these kids to school, And we made it over to the school, and I got out of the bus, and I walked into the school, and I collapsed, and I had a massive coronary in my office. And I remember waking up in the ambulance thinking it didn't need to be that big a sign. And then the next thing I remember is that I woke up in the hospital, and they had tubes and monitors on me, and I had a pillowcase under my head, and it was white. And when I opened my eyes, my family was there, and unbeknownst to me, they had called my family and said they weren't sure I was going to survive, that I would suffer a massive heart attack. And I remember waking up and realizing right off the bat that the pillowcase was white, and my brother was standing there, and his beautiful blue eyes, and they sort of welled up with tears. And he said, "Gee, sis, what happened?" And I said, "I don't know, but whatever they're giving me is turning my hair purple." And, I know that that's a lie. I know that that's a lie. And I'm here to tell you that if you've ever told a lie and then believed it, you're an alcoholic. And, that's just how I would qualify it, that it's just the way it is, Anyway, what happened for me is this. I was in the hospital. The doctors came in. I had a lot of doctors, and they asked me how much I drank, and I was as honest as I knew how to be, and not one of those doctors said, "Well, do you think you have a problem with alcohol?" And so I began to think, maybe I don't really have a problem with alcohol at all. Maybe if I told them how much I drank, they didn't think it was too much, so maybe I don't really have a problem with alcohol at all. Straight up, sticking right straight up, purple, bright purple, oh my God. My collar pulled up to here, looking around, and I'm thinking, well, I have sunk to an all-time low now. They're going around the room. They're all introducing themselves. "I'm Charlie. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic." They get to me. I go, "I'm Lily. I'm an alcoholic." And I keep right on going. Had no idea what I just said. This lady got up. She gave a talk. I'm sure it was a wonderful talk. I don't know what she said. What I heard her say was this. Well, I heard somebody get up and read how it works, and they talked about the chapter to the obnoxious, and I knew I was in the right place. It's a disease of perception, The chapter to the obnoxious, I fit right in, and obnoxious, I knew I was obnoxious. I was the girl that was dancing on the bar at 3 p.m, because I never knew if I was going to make it till 8, And so what she did say was this. She said, "Here at the Portland Group, we have a wonderful way to help you start a new way of life by offering you a white chip." And I'm sitting in the third row with a chip on my shoulder thinking, you have got to be kidding. You don't drink and they pay you off in poker chips? Oh, I can't wait, And I'm thinking, I don't even know how to play cards. Anyway, the next words she said were the words that were going to save my life, and these were those words. "If you're too afraid to pick up a white chip, see me after the meeting, I'll give you one." And all of my life, I have been afraid. And I didn't know that until I came and sat with you, that all of my life I've been afraid. And the way that I dealt with my fear was to march up and get in your face. So when she said too afraid, I thought, well, I ain't letting these losers know I'm afraid of them. So I marched up there and I got a white chip, and a wonderful thing happened. Everybody started applauding. I'm thinking, this ain't bad. Ain't nobody applauding the places I was hanging out. And I like to drink. If I don't pee my pants, we'll be in good shape. So the miracle happens. I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I get the white chip. This beautiful woman, I have never, ever seen this woman again. I'm taking off my clothes! She was beautiful. She was absolutely beautiful. And she said, "Hi, my name's Pearl. Keep coming back." And I thought she said, "We need you." So I kept coming back, 1 meeting a week. I didn't know there was more than that. But now I'm not, white knuckle sobriety. And I don't know where I can go that they don't serve alcohol except for the mall. At that time, they didn't serve alcohol in the mall, so I went to the mall every day. And I drove them people nuts. I'm like telling them where they should hang the shirts, and if you mark this down, you might sell it, and don't you look like an idiot? You got on a 3-piece suit and a painter's hat. What's up with that? And why are you climbing on the ladder? Don't you have any lowly people here that can do that for you? And whew, boy, was that guy glad when I found out there was a meeting every day of the week. So then they said, get a sponsor, and how I got my sponsor is this way here. I picked somebody that drank with me, because I read the steps right off the bat. I was real smart. I read those steps the first night. I picked and chose the ones I was going to do. And I figured that I wouldn't have to do a 4th and 5th because this lady drank with me and she already knew my crap. That wasn't right. What happened for me, though. At about 30 days sober, I thought, I can't stand this. I can't do this. You people, I just can't stand this. You were so serious. Every meeting I went to, it was like the same woman spoke. Same woman get up there every single time. And then I figured it out. My sponsor made me call her every morning. She'd say, we do the reading for the day, and then she'd say, where are you going to a meeting tonight? See, and she asked me that so that she could call this woman and tell her, you be at that meeting because she's coming over there tonight. And they'd get up there and they would talk about, I'm telling you, cunning, baffling, powerful, terminal, fatal. Oh, my God, I'm sitting there going, lighten up. I can't stay here. They're way too serious for me, And then she would always end by saying, today I'm happy, joyous, and free. And I'd think, yeah, well, not me. I am not happy, joyous, and free, and I don't want to be either, so there. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking, And today she's my sponsor. Oh, happy, joyous, and free herself. She's my sponsor. Oh, God is funny, He really is. Anyway, I started to work the steps, and then I had a friend that came in after me, and he had this guy that was his sponsor, and this guy was really tough, and he would call me up and he'd rag about this guy. He'd say, you'll never believe what James is making me do now. So he'd tell me, and then I'd call my sponsor and I'd go, you'll never believe what James is making him do. And she'd say, well, why don't you do that too? It took me a long time to figure out, don't tell her that stuff, So I came and I found my way to be with you guys, and the miracle happened right away because my sponsor told me that, my kids were pretty much grown up and gone now, and they were doing their own deal, they had their own deal going on, and she said, why don't you volunteer down to the Central Service Office? And so I went to the Central Service Office, and I learned how to do 12-step calls, and I learned how to answer the hotline, and I learned about the traditions of AA, and I learned about the concepts, and the steps of how it works, and the traditions is what keeps it working, and I just learned wonderful things at the hand of this guy, and that was the director down there. And one day my daughter called asking for help. And I don't recommend that you 12-step your own children. It's just the way it happened for me. And I turned around and I said, I just don't know what to do. And he said, of course you do. You get another woman and you go and sit by her bed and you tell her that if she does as you have done, she'll never have to do this again. And that there's a way out. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous. And my daughter is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous today with coming up on 16 years of sobriety, and that is, without a doubt, a miracle, My youngest son suffered from this disease, and his alcoholism and drug addiction took him to places that are unspeakable. And I'm here to tell you that it was in the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous that I learned to grow up. And what happened for me was my son got into lots of trouble, and I used to run with a checkbook and bail him out of jail. And I used to think I was doing it to help him. And I realized today that what I was doing was I couldn't look bad. If I went and bailed him out of jail and kept it out of the paper, you guys wouldn't know what a bad mother I was. And that's what I did, So I bailed him out, and I bailed him out, and I bailed him out, and he kept getting in more and more trouble and more and more trouble. And got to the point where I dreaded the phone ringing, He was either going to be laying on the side of the road, in a hospital, hungry, cold, or in jail somewhere, or maybe dead. And my sponsor was a wise woman. She said, Lilly, you need to go to Al-Anon. You need to go to Al-Anon. You need to learn how to get tough, And I learned in Al-Anon that I needed to take care of myself, but I needed to stop enabling this kid, and I stopped doing that. And one day he called me, and he was in jail one more time, and he said he was going to kill himself. And the voice that came out of me was God's voice, because that voice said, I'm so sorry you have to do this to yourself. But if you decide to kill yourself, go knowing that I love you. There's a way out. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I hope you find your way there. And I hung up the phone, and I felt a pain and a loneliness that nobody should have to feel. Because I knew now that I was going to have to be strong enough to fulfill those words. And that the only way I was going to be able to do that was with the help of everybody in AA and Al-Anon. And so I guess you could say I'm a double winner, because I closed that door that night. And the hardest work that I have ever done in Alcoholics Anonymous was say no to that kid. It is by far and away the hardest work I have ever done in my life. It's very, very difficult to be a mother, to have been a drunk mother, to have been a mother that loved your kid with every fiber of their being, and to watch them dying from the disease of alcoholism, and know that maybe you helped them along the way, I don't take the blame for his alcoholism today. I believe that it is a family disease, and we're all afflicted with it. And anyway, I'm here to tell you that it is my personal belief that there is nothing harder on the face of this earth than watching somebody you love dying from the disease of alcoholism. And I know what I'm talking about. Because, you see, I I had 3 children still living, and one of them was my superhero. He was the kid that didn't have the drinking problem. He was the kid that did everything he ever wanted to do. He wanted to be a hockey player, and I don't know how I did it, but I did manage to get him to hockey camps, and I did manage to get him for his ice time, and he was a hockey player, and he was a good hockey player, And he wanted to be a Marine, and he was a Marine, and he was the Marine of the cycle. And I got to go and see him graduate, from Marine Corps and watch him lead the parade in dress blues, and he got out of the Marine Corps, and he was at home, and he really couldn't find good work in the state of Maine, and a friend of his called and said, how would you like a job with the Department of Defense? And he said, sure, they're handing them jobs out every day, and lo and behold, he sent his resume down there, he faxed it down there, and the following Wednesday he was on his way to Washington, D.C. That house that I destroyed has been completely restored. I don't owe the bank dime one. They're paid off in full. They are so paid off. It has all new windows in it, all new carpet in it. I don't live in it, but I own it. My brother lives in it. And, I've been given the privilege about 8 years ago. My mother had a friend that they lived together for many years after both of them lost their husbands, and she had to go to be put in a nursing home, and I knew that my mother couldn't be in this house by herself, and I asked her what she wanted, and she said she wanted to go out of their feet first. She says, this is the only thing I have left that your father gave me. And I said, then I can make that happen. And I moved in and started taking care of my elderly mother, and I completely restored her house, and I made it handicapped accessible, and I have a pool in the backyard. And I'm not going to say that, if you come here and do the steps, you're going to get a pool. You got to do the work, and I've made the financial amends. The bank lets me have money today. They expect me to pay it back, too, and I do. But I'm here to tell you that I have a wonderful life. I have a life full of love. I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I know that if you're new and you're sitting in this room and you're hearing me say that, you're thinking, oh, gag me, make me sick, What is this crap they talk about, a life second to none? I'm going to tell you what that life second to none is. See, you came here and I got a beacon of hope. That's what I got when I came to the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous. I found hope here. I found people that were just like me. Even though I thought you were losers, I found people that were just like me. I found people that would hold my hand when I was nutty. I found people that would hold my hand when I was sad. I found people that would hold my hand in love. I found people that taught me how to be the mom I am today. And I don't want to leave my son out there wandering around drunk. I want to tell you my miracle story. My miracle story is this, my son is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous today. And 2 years ago, I got asked on the spur of the moment if I would go to this auction to help a recovery house for men. And I said, sure, I could do that, And I've taken care of the financial wreckage of my past. And so this is what happened. I go to that auction. One of the things they're going to auction off is a cruise. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll buy that cruise. My son was going to get married, and I thought, well, I'll buy that cruise, So they put the cruise up. Nobody bid on it, so they put it back. And at the end of the night, they put it back up, and they said, is anybody going to bid on this cruise? I said, I'll give you $600 for it. Sold. So I got the cruise, and I'm walking around with this big cruise ship underneath my arm, cardboard cruise ship. And this guy comes up to me, one of the guys that's in the halfway house. And he said, you're so lucky you got that cruise. And I said, oh, I'm not going to keep it. I'm going to give it away. He said, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to give it to my son. I said, he's getting married. I'm going to give it to him for his honeymoon. And he said, well, I wished I was your son. Who is your son? And I says, Tom. He goes, Tom? Tom H? And I go, yeah. He goes, he's my sponsor. I said, don't tell him. And so here's how God works. This is how God puts the frosting on the cake. I get the cruise. My son's being married September 24th. The cruise is leaving September 25th. So they get married. They have a beautiful wedding. All my AA friends are there. The gutsy girls are there. We're having a good time at that wedding. His new in-laws don't get it. But he's like, the father, he wants to be like us, I can tell, but his wife's like hanging onto his coat like, we are just having a good time. We are just having fun. And he's going, they don't get it. They're like, they don't drink. And look at them. They're all having fun. They're up dancing. They're laughing. So anyway, my son goes off. He gets married. He goes off on his honeymoon. Comes back about 12 weeks later. We're sitting in the living room. He goes, "Hey, Ma, you know that honeymoon cruise you gave us?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I think it was a conception cruise." Went right over my head. Right over my head. Right? "How do you feel about being a grandmother?" I said, "I already am a grandmother." He goes, "No, how do you feel about being a grandmother?" I says, "What are you, retarded? I already am a grandmother." He goes, "No, how do you feel like being a grandmother again?" Oh, my God, I was off that couch into his arms. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, my God, he's going to have a baby. So here's the deal. The baby is due July 8th, I think it was something like that, July 10th, whatever it was. And I'm going to be asked to speak at a convention in Nashville, Tennessee. So now I am giving them the marching orders. You better have the baby on time because I got to go to Nashville and I want to be here when that baby's born. I want to see your face. God owes me. I want to see the look on your face. When you have your own kid, you'll know just exactly what I've been through with you. Ugh. Since I got sober, I've learned how to play the organ, and I've gotten pretty good at it. So I decided that for my granddaughter, I would make her a CD of her father and mother's favorite music played by her grandmother on the organ. So I make my little tape. And my friends, Jerry and Jill, who also do taping, come and I ask them if they know how to get it off this floppy disk and put it on a CD. And Jerry figures it out, but it takes us a long, long time. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning on June the 8th that we finished this little CD, Maya's CD, With Love from Grandy. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. It's my son. He goes, "Ma, we're on the way to the hospital. Shireen's in labor." And I'm going, "She better wait and have that baby on June 10th. Forget July 8th, June 10th now, right? He says, "I don't think she shares your sentiments." But here's the frosting on the cake. For this drunk grandmother, for that drunk son, God gifted him with a baby girl on the 72nd anniversary of the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's the frosting on the cake. So I'm here to tell you this. I'm here to tell you that this is my story. It's what happened to me. You all have your stories, and they're just as important as mine. I don't believe that I'm a professional speaker. I believe that I have been given a gift by God to come and stand before you and share my message, and I hope it's been a message of hope. I want to tell you this, that there's nowhere in the world that I have found love like I have found here in the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous. It goes on and on and on. And I want to tell you something else. There's a power in this room that you can only find in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a light in people's eyes that can only be found in Alcoholics Anonymous. People look at us, they think we're weird. You think they thought we were weird when we were drinking? They really think we're weird now. And if you ever come to Maine, please come on a Saturday night because Patty would love to take you to a bean supper. Thank you very much for letting me share. To work for the Department of Defense, and his job was to guard foreign dignitaries, and he guarded the Pope, and he guarded Mother Teresa, and he guarded several people, and he told me that the greatest experience in his life was being embraced by Mother Teresa. And then he called me one day and he said, "Mom," he says, "I got a chance to go to police academy and I'm going." And I said, "Good for you," and he went off to become a police officer in Washington, D.C., and it's what he always wanted to do. I remember taking him there when he was a kid, and he said, "Mom, someday I'm going to be a cop in this city." And I said, "Sure you are, honey, sure you are, And I got to go to his graduation, and he graduated, and he was a cop, and he worked in one of the toughest areas in this country. He worked in Anacostia in the 7th District of Washington, D.C., and he loved what he did. He loved it. He worked with kids and he made a difference in their life, and he tried to tell them, stay in school. It's the most important thing you can do for yourself. Stay in school, and this is the hard part. I don't know why that thing is whistling, but I think it's Sammy talking to me. In March of 2002, I was invited to speak at a convention in Cape May, New Jersey. And I called my son and I said, "Hey, Sam, guess what? I'm going to go speak at a convention." And he said, "Mom, I would love to come and hear you speak. I've never heard you share your story, and I would love to come. And I can take the ferry, and I can be there." And I said, "Great." And he came, and he got to hear me. And we ran up and down the beaches of Cape May, New Jersey, and we raced to the top of the Cape May lighthouse. And we had an absolutely wonderful weekend. And after I shared, he picked me up and he twirled me around and he says, "Mom," he goes, "you've got a gift." He says, "It's a gift from God. You've got to keep on sharing. Because I think that's what you're supposed to be doing." And on May 1st of 2002, at 10 minutes of 2 in the morning, I got a phone call that my son was dead. He wasn't the one that I expected to die. And that morning, I made a phone call, and I couldn't even talk. I called my friend Patty. And I said, "Sammy's dead." I don't remember anything else. I just remember that my girlfriends came, and I want to tell you about my girlfriends. There's 5 of us, and we have been fondly nicknamed by somebody sitting in this room as the Gutsy Girls. And we meet every Wednesday night at 5 o'clock for dinner. And we've been doing so for 13 years, every Wednesday night. And we've had some tough stuff come our way. And that was one of the toughest. But, we put the stuff on the table every Wednesday night. We put whatever's going on in our life, the good stuff and the bad stuff, and then we hold each other's hands and walk through. And I want to tell you that those Gutsy Girls showed up at my house. Those Gutsy Girls went out and bought my clothes that I was to wear. Those Gutsy Girls held me up. Those Gutsy Girls said, "Lily, you put one foot in front of the other. Lily, you don't drink. Lily, you go to meetings. Lily, you ask for help. Lily, you be a power of example. You let people know that you can walk through this kind of stuff and you don't have to drink no matter what." And I can remember my friend Patty, I'd sit across the table from her on Wednesday night, and I would have this huge lump in my throat, and I just wanted to cry. I just wanted to let it out and say, "Don't you understand how much it hurts? Parents aren't supposed to bury their children, and they're certainly not supposed to bury 2 of their children. And this hurts so much." But I didn't say anything. And she would say to me, "Lily, you're such a power of example. You're such a power of example." And underneath, in my heart, I would be like screaming. I wanted to say the F word right out loud, I don't want to be a power of example, not if it hurts this much. I don't want to be a power of example. And little did I know that 18 months later, the power of example that I was going to be called upon to be was going to be to her daughter, who lost her husband very unexpectedly. And, Patty comes to that meeting with the Gutsy Girls, and she feels that same thing in her throat that I felt, and we've walked through that, and I want to tell you that I am not a sad woman today. I am not. I am a woman full of joy, I love my life. I love my life.